Welcome back to another episode of Principal Soup. I'm Jamal Crook.
I'm Zach Shuttler.
Zach, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about the relationship between the superintendent and the principal and the relationship the principal has with the superintendent. Uh,
Hmm.
I think what's interesting about the role of superintendent, which comes up in a lot of different industries, is we tend to get promoted because we were really, really good at the previous job.
Hmm.
We get promoted into a very different job and we
Hmm.
try to run and handle ourselves in ways that made us good in the previous area. Being a principal isn't the same as being a superintendent. Being a superintendent isn't the same as being a principal. Both jobs are very difficult. They're both extremely challenging. I think that relationship between the principal and the superintendent can become very unhealthy if the superintendent operates as if they are a principal with a different title. They
So
try to,
now, so
yeah, and you're a principal right now, so I'm sure you can relate.
so so the higher up you go, there's always a perception, and I think a lot of principals feel like right now I can do the role of my superintendent. I think about my school, I think about what I need, I think about all those different things. And sometimes we come from a perspective that is at the school level and not necessarily global. I had a teacher tell me one time a couple of years ago, she was like, "What do you do all day? I'm sure you just sit in your office and watch YouTube and call your girlfriend." I was like, first of all, I don't have a girlfriend. I have a wife. Number one. Number two, I could see how someone could feel that way. And I'm extremely visible on campus. I spent a lot of time in classrooms. I just just so hadn't I wasn't in her classroom. But then there's a traditional perception of, what's this guy, what's this girl do all day? But send me forms, initiatives, and directives, and all of those other things. So break down from me through through your lens the difference between the roles, because a lot of principals think that a superintendent is just a principal at the highest level.
Yeah, and I think the smaller the district, sometimes the community and the people on the outside believe that a superintendent is a principal by another name. So
Mm.
the superintendent is the CEO of the organization. I know you're in the largest school district in Florida, so who knows how big your budget is. Um, every district that I've been at, even the smallest ones, have a multi-million-dollar budget. So
Mhm.
I have a treasurer, but I am the chief executive officer of how the school is run. I am the direct communicator with the Board of Education, which would be my five bosses who are elected by the community to run the school effectively and efficiently. And the superintendent is involved in making a lot of really big decisions, whether it be trying to get a bond or levy passed, um, in charge of HR at smaller districts, in charge of um, the communication with the news media, in charge of hiring process, in charge of the culture and the core values, in charge of coaching, supporting, and training all other administrators, overseeing maintenance, transportation, food service. It's a very complex job, and
Mhm.
that relationship with the principals is huge. And I'll relate this. I know you were a former Division I college football player. I played football in high school. I was a linebacker.
Mhm.
A good principal is like a high quality defensive lineman. They're able to keep those offensive linemen, those blockers off the linebackers, so the linebackers can make plays.
Yeah.
So if I am, as the superintendent, constantly dealing with teachers being upset at you, if I'm constantly dealing with parents coming to me upset with a student to student issue, if I
Mhm.
have parents and community members coming to me constantly because they're upset with the coach or the performance of our football team, in a football perspective, that's like the defensive lineman playing hero ball and constantly trying to sack the quarterback or shoot a gap on a run play, and now those offensive linemen are all over me as the linebacker, and now I
Mhm.
can't make plays and I can't make any tackles to make our defense effective.
Mhm.
So if the principals aren't taking care of the day-to-day responsibilities of the building, the big picture ideas, the issues that are huge. I always tell my board, like, I get paid to make probably a dozen huge decisions each year. Now I make thousands of decisions each year, but it's those very challenging, tough, nobody wants to make decisions that drive how the district ends up. How hard is it to make those decisions if you have a 300-pound offensive lineman on you?
Right. So then the other perspective to that then is, okay, well, if it's my role to make sure that those things don't get to you, then I need the proper support. I need the proper equipment. You got to put me in position because you got to make the strong call, right? We're talking football jargon now. Let's break it down,
You might
right?
lose some people, but yeah.
Lose some people. You gotta give me the right strong call. If I'm out of position, you gotta give me support and coaching and not accountability and inspection sometimes, right? And there's a difference. And then you got to make sure that um you got to check in on them. You got to know where I'm at any given time. And I think the dynamic between a principal and a superintendent, and then some districts, some larger districts, you have your principal supervisors. So in your from your perspective, why does that relationship matter so much?
It's essential because when we sit down in our meeting rooms and we share our core values and we talk about the direction that we want the district to go, that's an umbrella term. You know, those core values do drive everything that we do, but they're going to look very different at the elementary school compared to the middle school, compared to the transportation department, compared to the food service department, compared to the high school. So
Mhm.
developing that strong relationship so the principals know what your vision is for the district.
Mhm.
But then it's their job to take what those core values are, what that vision is, and make it happen at their level of the
Mhm.
organization. So the umbrella is covering them, and that's what good leadership is. It kind of protects them from the rain. It provides them the ability to go from place to place without getting, soaking wet and attacked by the elements.
Mhm.
And ultimately, underneath that umbrella, they have to make it happen. And that's
Right.
where that level of trust is. But that level of trust is a two-way street. And what oftentimes happens with superintendents that were former principals, especially early on, we started the podcast talking about how you get promoted because you're really good at what you did.
Mhm.
So that's where superintendents can become very micromanagey
Mhm.
because they were promoted because they were a really good principal. And some of the superintendent stuff they might not be incredibly comfortable with, but they know how to run a building. So
Mhm.
now they're on top of that principle every day saying, I think it would run better if we did it this way. Or the principal finds out that the parent met directly with the superintendent and not with the principal about that student issue.
Mhm.
And then it starts to demotivate that principal. So now the superintendent kind of creates their own mess by being micromanaged to where that principal is never going to fully develop into what they could be. And they feel like there's a lack of trust to where, yeah, we have all these meetings where you tout our core values. You tell me you trust me. You tell me you believe in me. But
Mhm.
boy, every time I walk into my building, people kind of know that I'm a placeholder and I'm not really running it.
So I want to screen this because this is something that I've learned within my own practice, and it's no matter who you lead, right? And we've all done the role, and this is outside, and I bring it back to this. Your competency does not matter. What matters is you helping me build my competency to the level in which you envision for your organization, your district, or whatever the case is. Because to your point, it is a it is an extremely demotivating factor when we put expectations on the people that we lead to lead in the way that suits our leadership style. Whereas giving me the tools, the training, and the support to resolve the issues in a way that's going to be conducive for my personal growth. Because I think a lot of times we don't realize that there's always a learning curve wherever you go. And then no matter how long you've been doing something, there's always something that you need to learn more. And I think going back to the concept, COVID taught us that. We all thought that we were the greatest leaders, not the greatest leaders, but we all had a sense of what it is that we were going to do. But I think in that situation showed us that it can change in a moment, and then nobody really knows what to do. So it goes back to, that support. If you want me to be a thing, then if you have high expectations, give me high levels of support so that way I can execute those expectations. But be very careful. And then perception and reality are so true in this. Don't have high expectations, and then don't show me how you are providing high levels of support for those things. Because then as a principal, I think that, man, like we have all these expectations and I got to make, milk with ducks. And I don't know how to milk a duck. I don't think you can, right? But if you expect me to milk a duck, then you got to give me the tools and the resources to make sure that I can milk ducks all day.
Yeah, that's the job of the superintendent, to make sure that our administrators are equipped, not just equipped with the tools that they need, but also the mental tools and the growth and the development and the support. And that's what we do with a lot of our team meetings. We don't get into the weeds with a lot of the building level specific things. We talk a lot about what we want our school to look like, how those core values can help us get there. We can have the one-on-one meeting, me and the principal. We don't need to waste our time with 15 people in the room, with those specific details.
Right.
I tend to think of a story I heard from Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek, he was meeting with a CEO of a large organization, and he asked the CEO. He said, what is the most important thing to you? And the CEO gave an answer that I think most people would think is a good answer. He said, most important to me are our customers. I want our customers to be happy. I want our customers to be satisfied. And Sinek looks at him and says, that's the wrong way to lead your organization. And he's like, what do you mean? It all comes down to our customers. He said, the most important people to you should be the people that work directly underneath you, that you lead. Because if you train them and you equip them and you coach them, then they are going to train and equip and coach the point of service people that are directly working with your customers. So if you care about your customers as much as you say that you do, the most important people to you should be the people directly underneath you in the chain of command that you lead. And I think it works that way in a school district too. If I want the best outcomes, if I want the best results for our students, the people that I need to invest in most are my principals and my administrators. And then be very honest and transparent with them that here's how this works. Then I expect and I trust you to invest everything that we're learning with your teachers. And then be very transparent with them. Everything that we invest into them, we expect them to give to our customers, our students. It doesn't work the other way around. If I'm a micromanager and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to spend my entire day today throwing football at recess as the superintendent because that looks good and it would make a great photo op. Yeah, that's nice to do every once in a while, and there is some value in that. But if that's where I'm spending my time because they're the customer of our school, boy, I'm missing the boat if I want great outcomes for them. And I think we also see the same mistake sometimes with our principals because they used to be really great teachers. So they relate exceptionally well to our students. So then it's uncomfortable to work with the adults. So they continue as the principal to pour into the students. But the effect size isn't great if they're not pouring into their teachers.
Right. So let me ask you this from a conceptual standpoint. And I get the big picture. How many, as a principal supervisor, how many employees do you really have on each campus?
For my district,
You wouldn't, yeah, I'm talking about just in general. I'm a superintendent. This is I'm the superintendent
Oh,
and I have a school. How many employees do you have?
like I'm a small district. We have about 170, 175 employees. We have about 1,500 students. I have about 12 other administrators. When you look at maintenance, transportation, building principals,
So I guess so now let me back up this theory. How many employees does the board have in every school district?
how many
It should,
employees?
it should
Yeah,
be
just
one. Should be
it
one.
it,
The
depends.
superintendent.
It depends. Like like Ohio, the board directly supervises or leads the treasurer and the superintendent. So
Okay.
yes,
So in theory, one, right? So the board has one, and schools are a microcosm of the district. So then really in concept, is where I'm going with this. Every principal supervisor has one employee on that campus. Because just like you said, if you pour into me, I pour into the teachers pour into the students, is where you spend your time at. And I mentioned that because as you were talking, I think about when I have the support and when I have those things, when I'm inspired to pour into teachers, I might not know every kid's name
no,
on campus. There are some kids like, hey man, I don't know your name, and that's a good thing right now, especially in August and September. Like, hey, I don't, you new here. It's gonna take me a little while to learn your name, but I know every teacher's name. I know on Mondays, why the teacher comes in 10 minutes late, those things. But because I have someone that pours into me, I can do it. And I think what you just said, whatever a superintendent does to the principals, that's exactly what's going to happen with the teachers. And normally that's exactly what happens with the students.
and it takes time. It's not a quick fix, but I think done well over time, that gives you your most consistency. And as Cynic talks about, like we want the line on the graph to be going this way.
Mhm.
We want steady growth, steady progress. I think a sign of bad leadership or a sign of trying to do things really quick, you have effective moments. I mean, you do, but the graph is like up and down and up and down. That's not good for anybody. If you can keep things steady and having that chain of command is very important. And as superintendent, you can't let your ego get in the way. And sometimes you're getting pressure from the community or you're getting pressure from your board. They say, like, how could you not know this? Well, if I have a great relationship with Jamal as my principal, he felt like I didn't need to know it. And my assumption right now, and I'll talk to him about this, that it's taken care of. You have to be comfortable as a superintendent not knowing everything, nor should you know everything. If you create a culture and an environment where you feel like the principals have to run to you to tell you everything, and then you feel like as the superintendent that you need to report everything to your board, it creates a sense of dysfunction. It creates a sense of paranoia. It creates a sense of having to watch your back because you feel like
Mhm.
everybody's out to catch you messing up or catch you making a mistake. So I have to trust my principals to get the job done. And when I have a parent or a community member press me and say, well, how could you not know about that? Well, there might be some instances where I have to talk to Jamal and say, hey, like if this would happen again, let me know. But if I have a good administrative team, they've worked with me long enough. They know what I think I need to know about and what I don't need to know about. And I can calmly and politely say, hey, you know what? I understand you have an issue with your son and we want to take care of it. I'm gonna patch you through to Mr. Crook, and
Mhm.
he'll explain to you, how we'll work through this. I think
Right.
what happens is we try to be helpful. We want to be liked. And now, as the superintendent, I say, "Oh yeah, give me the information. I'll personally investigate this for you, Mrs. Smith." Now I create an entirely new issue, and then Mrs. Smith, next time she has an issue, who's she going to call? When
Yep.
she goes to the park with her friends who have kids the same age, who's she
Mhm.
going to tell them to call when they have an issue?
Yep.
It's going to be
And
me.
it completely undermines the authority that you delegated to the principal to run the school when you do it that way. But when you do it the way that you said it first and you defer back to the principal, it makes the community believe that the principal can make decisions on that campus. Because like you said, you don't want to be a principal and be a placeholder at any given point in time. And the only person that can really make sure that that's not the case is superintendent and or principal superintendent.
And you mentioned the Board of Education. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the benefit of a healthy Board of Education,
Yep.
because a Board of Education that coaches, supports, and encourages the superintendent allows that relationship between the superintendents and the principals to be effective. If you
Mhm.
have a Board of Education that is micromanaging, or that they feel like they're in positions to run the district and the superintendent is just more or less a puppet to allow them to get what they want in the district, it creates major dysfunction. And now there's distrust throughout the organization. Am I doing this because it's the right thing, or am I doing this because I'm being pressured by the board? Is the board going directly to the principals and asking what's going on, and they're not following the chain of command? Then you just have a mess. And
Yeah.
in my current role, and I can't say this enough, I'm very blessed with 5 unbelievable board members that
Mhm.
understand the importance of their role, and that they understand that the stability they have with me gives me the opportunity to create a stable and effective district.
Yep.
And that relationship bleeds directly into what the relationship is like with the principals.
Right. And I think it goes back to building trust on all of the different levels. We gotta trust each other. Um, Let me ask you something. From your perspective, what helps you build trust within yourself or your confidence in principles? Like what affect helps you?
What helps me build the trust with the principal?
Well, not you building trust with the principal. What makes you trust a principal more?
Oh, I think what helps me trust a principal is, do they follow through with what they say that they're going to do? And do they take the ideas that we share in our leadership meetings and take them to the next level? Situations where I don't feel like I'm a caretaker or that I'm a babysitter. So, we sit around and we talk about, hey, core value number one is take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. We want our people to be in a good mindset so that way they can go out and do great things for our students. That's core value number one, team. All right. Then I open up my email because I'm copied on all the emails, and I see that one of our principals is doing a professional development activity where they're focusing on mindfulness. And I see another principal talking about, hey, we're going to do a PD activity where we're doing yoga, and here's why we're doing yoga. Or, hey, today I'm going to gather all the kids in the gym at the end of the day so you guys have 45 minutes on your own because we care about your mindset and your mental health. I didn't tell them to do any of those things. I just planted the seed. When
Right.
I start to see those things happen, that we share ideas, we share our core values, and they take them to the next level, then I know that we got something going.
Right. And I think for me, in the reverse is if you don't know something, be honest. A lot has changed in the grand scheme of school. And sometimes what a principal will encounter is a situation in which I have a question, I have a concern, and instead of just saying like, "Hey, I don't know," let me find someone who can help you. Because when I was a principal, I didn't have to deal with COVID. When I was a principal, some of these things or some of these laws, like they were not in place. But let's figure it out together. And then also do what you say that you're going to do. If it's yes, it's yes. If it's no, it's no. You can't say yes to everybody. You can't say no to everybody. But being authentic, because if I see those two things, I know that if you're telling me something, then there's going to be a bunch of consistency that follows, not only with your words, but also with your actions. And and I want to say this: actions speak louder than words, but I don't know how else to emphasize that. It's not just what you say when you communicate, it's what you do after you communicate what you say. That's more important than anything.
Time builds trust, or time builds distrust. And
Mhm.
when you go through these things together with people, with your principals as a superintendent, every school year is going to bring its challenges. Some are just nuisances, some are, career defining moments.
Mhm.
When you go through these things with people, you find out who they are and what they're about.
Mhm.
And you can't fabricate it. You can't go through the drive-through window and pick it up. You go through it together, and then that galvanizes the team. And you find out who's on the team, you find out who's not on the team, you find out who you can trust, you find out who you don't trust. And
Mhm.
when you're a principal, when you're an administrator, not everything is going to go your way. I mean, the superintendent, I've heard you say this before, like holds the pen last. So I'm dealing with a lot of different entities. And sometimes I have to make a decision that I know is not going to make you as the principal happy. How do you respond to that? Are we still good or are we not? And if we're still good because you understand my perspective and I articulate why I made the decision, then we can get through most things together.
Right. And to your point, we I think we have to recognize that when you're moving to the realm of assistant principal, and you start to lead a school, you're dealing with people who are highly functioning people at one point in time in their career. And to to manage someone who has big ideas, to manage someone or to manage and support someone who wants to, eat the whole elephant at one time sometimes. Dealing with highly functioning people, and I bring that up because I was at a training, and it was a whole bunch of us in there. It was principals, principal supervisors, assistant principals, and we got into our breakout sessions at our tables, and one person said, it was a principal supervisor, and they were like, I struggle with dealing with people who are highly effective because I don't know what to say to them. I don't know how to find one thing so that way that I don't know how to make them better. I prefer dealing with people who need a lot of support and coaching. What are your thoughts?
I think to each his own. I've always found that I work better with people that I might have to tap on the shoulder and say slow down than
Mm-hmm.
people that I have to push and pull. I can only do
Mm-hmm.
that for so long. Um, I think that was a struggle for me when I went from superintendent back to principal. I was so used to working with my administrative team that was smaller, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it was easier to it was easier to move things kind of forward because I was not used to being in the realm of being the building principal and forgetting that the teachers are working with at the high school level 25 students for 45 minutes, then the bell rings, then 25 more students, then the bell rings, and kind of forgetting that that's their schedule and that's hectic, and you know they need time to breathe. Where administration, there's a lot going on, but you have a little bit more of that oxygen to breathe in between, and just realizing that I needed to slow down
Mm-hmm.
to allow them to kind of catch their breath. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I think my personality, it's a little bit easier to work with somebody that just needs refinement as opposed to needing a whole construct to kind of go fast.
So as you were responding to that, a story came to mind, right? And I think this is really something that that emphasizes great leadership. So there was this master teacher in China, and he was an advisor to the emperor. And the emperor, they were just coming off of one of their greatest victories, and it was going to lead their dynasty into just a season of peace that was unprecedented. And the master teacher had a couple of disciples that he was working with. He trained them in the way of government, and they were going to transition. So they all got invited to this big ball or extravaganza, right? It was lavish, all of the great things they had. It was a party of parties. And when they got there, they they were paying so much homage and respect to the emperor, and they were saying all of these amazing things, and the young disciples were a little confused, and the master teacher kind of caught me. kind of caught their vibe and kind of pulled them aside. He was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they were like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why they're paying him so much respect when he didn't do anything. The general fought the war. The chief financial officer, kept us in a great situation as it relates to our finances through this. We didn't go under because they managed the resources well. And then, our chief communicator did all of these things to keep us informed. What did the emperor actually do? And the master teacher goes, I see. He says, what's the most important part of a chariot wheel? Meaning, what makes it strong? And the the young men they replied, they said, surely it's the spokes that make it strong, the thing that holds the wheel together, if you can imagine this wheel. He said, yeah. He says, but what happens if you put those things too closely together? He says the wheel wouldn't be very strong at all. He says, so the most important thing on a chariot wheel that makes it strong is the space in between the strong columns. And he said, that's what the emperor provided. He said, because what you don't know is that while we were fighting external conflict, there was internal conflict that needed to be managed. And everyone had to have space to do what they needed to do and the resources that they needed to deal with. And the emperor managed all of those things. So it's the space in between those folks that make a strong leader. Leaders providing space for other strong leaders to run or to go or to do the things that are necessary. And I think sometimes we bunch all of our spokes together, and then that's when you have the dysfunction and the chaos and the internal conflict overtakes everything.
Yeah, very similar to what Cynic talks about with good leadership provides cover from above. They set the culture, they allow the principals, the administration to go out and make decisions and take chances and take risks that could be highly successful, knowing that they have protection from their leadership as long as they're following the organization's ethics and values and morality. And Cynic talks about that circle of safety, to where, similar to the emperor, you can withstand a lot of attacks from the outside if you're united and trusted and pointed in the same direction. What crumbles most teams is when the enemies start appearing within, and there's backstabbing and gossip, and people are you're jockeying for position with inside the team. So teams can withstand a lot of pressure from the outside, but teams collapse from inside. And if there's not that circle of safety, you're gonna have a toxic environment. And a lot of the role of the superintendent or the leader is to create that circle of trust, that circle of safety, to where you have the cover to go and take chances and make things happen for your people and your team and your students.
So some things that I try to do to make sure that I am supporting the cause and making sure that my supervisor is understands where I'm at, but also building a stronger relationship. So just like you said at the beginning, being proactive with updates and making sure that I'm vulnerable enough to seek support. Making sure that I focus on solution principles is so important that we focus on solutions. It is so easy to identify what is going wrong. And the one thing that makes my legs itch more than anything is when people just come with problems and they have no concept of solution over time or the systems or how anything impacts anything. So it's very important for me as a principal that I'm focusing on solutions and not problems with my supervisor, because I realize that there are so many problems that superintendents and principal supervisors are dealing with already. It's important for me not to become another one of them. And then also understanding how my work fits into the broader perspective of the goals of the district and how I can be better aligned with where the vision of my superintendent and my supervisor.
Yeah, it's a big ecosystem, and there has to be that support all throughout the organization. And I want to direct folks that come to me, back to the building principals to solve that problem. And if I absolutely need to be in on the meeting, I'm going to invite the principal there. I mean, I've had instances where, the teacher or the staff says, I'd like to just meet with you to talk about, Jamal, for example. And I'll tell them, well, I'm going to invite Jamal to the meeting because, he's the building principal. Or if you feel more comfortable, just go to him directly, unless it's some type of HR issue or something like that. Because if you walk by my office as the superintendent and I've got 3 of your teachers in there talking to me about an issue, how's that going to make you feel as the principal?
Mhm. It's gonna make me feel terrible. I'm gonna wonder, I'm gonna be trying to figure out things all day, and yeah, that would create an internal sickness, especially if you don't give me any feedback or you keep it closed and just say you handled it. Because what that also does is it inspires teachers to overcut or jump over the placeholder.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we talked about, before, and the football analogy. If I need to make plays with the community and you know secure sponsorships and advertisements and communicate with the board and try to get a bond or levy passed or work on the budget, or go through interviews, it's not great if I'm then dealing with building situations too, or then I feel like I have to.
Right. So it's important for principals then to make sure that we are holding down our part so that way you can support us with the resources that we need to continue to do those things. Because truthfully, the relationship that we have with one another, it is, I believe it's probably the most relationship, one of the most important relationships in the district outside of teacher student.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's all I got for today. Until next time, this has been another episode of Principal Seat.